Hi guys, welcome to my showcase and tutorial for Guname. Guname is a plugin that spawns an arena high in the sky for players to compete against each other. Players must systematically make their way through the list of weapons until they secure a kill with the final weapon to win the game. Rewards are given to the winner, with optional rewards for players who score above a certain threshold. Players can join from anywhere on the map, and will be safely returned to the location from where they joined, along with their equipment, stats, and modifiers. So we're going to have a look at the configuration of Guname. We're going to take it line by line. So the first one we have here is our general game settings, which is the category. We have the minimum amount of players required for the event to proceed, which is set to 2 by default. Maximum players that can join is basically a limit, so if you don't want to have a limit you can set that to 0, otherwise it'll limit the players at 16 by default. Default lobby time is generally 300 seconds, but I lowered it for the purposes of testing, and that's basically how long the lobby will exist until the game begins. If there are enough players to proceed. The night vision plugin, so if you want players to be able to play this at night time, obviously see it as daytime, then yeah, the night vision plugin is set that to true, otherwise leave it as false. How many players does the player need to get? How many kills does the player need to get with each weapon to win? By default, it's 1 kill per weapon in order to progress to the next weapon. You can set this to whatever you like though, and it'll track the player's kills with each individual weapon. Refill the player's ammunition when they kill someone. By default set to true, so it automatically puts more ammo into their magazine, so they don't have to reload. How much health should a player give when the player? So how much health should we give the player when they kill someone? So basically, if you want to top their health up or reset it back to 100, you can. Set this to whatever you want. So if you wanted to do 25 health per kill, which probably is a bit more reasonable than 100, you can. How long should a player remain invulnerable after spawning? So this is how long when they spawn, basically before someone is able to kill them. So sometimes, on occasion, they might spawn right next to someone or right within someone's line of sight. So this gives them a little bit more of a fighting chance. And this is based on seconds. Should players lose levels if they jump off the edge? Set to true by default. So if they jump off the edge, try to suicide, prevent someone from getting a kill, then they'll lose a level, or they'll lose progress on their own weapon track. How should we determine respawn locations? So using either a sequence or distance. A sequence is basically randomizes the 34 odd spawn points in just a complete random order. So you might have players spawning right next to each other or right next to someone who just killed them. Whereas distance will assess the location of each player in the arena and try to pick the spawn position that is furthest away from all players. Clothing settings. This is basically the list of clothing items that you want to give the players to wear. So they're just a list of short names and skins. So if you want to add new items, you can sort of create new list objects here, add whatever you like in here, and set whatever skin values you like. Weapon settings. The profile weapon. So profile for weapons. The name of the profile lists the weapon short name. So we can see here we've got the standard and then the reverse by default. So standard is basically from pistol all the way to LMG. You can see here we've got the ammunition short names. This is the ammo short name that obviously goes with each weapon. So for example, if you wanted to change some of the shotguns to use slugs instead of the regular sort of birdshot shells, or buckshot, sorry, you can change that to whatever you like, and obviously the amount of ammo they get with it as well. And then the reverse is basically just a reverse order. So we start with the higher, more powerful weapons, and then systematically get down until we hit a grenade and a melee weapon. So this does support melee weapons, supports bows, crossbows, all those sorts of things. So you can create your own little primitive ones as well if you'd like. Sound effects. These are the effects to play when player joins. So when the game's about to start, this is the effect to play when a player is killed. So there's those little flame explosions you see in the video there when player dies. This is the sound to play when a player sort of progresses their weapon track. So it plays just to them. And when a player partially progresses, so if you've got multiple kills per progress track, this is what will play instead if they don't progress to the next weapon when they kill someone. And then this is the effect when the game ends. It's played to all players at the end of the game. Moving on to event settings, so prevent players from entering the arena if they have items on them. So if you want them to come in naked, so there's no risk of them losing their items. Set that to false, although it is pretty robust, so this shouldn't be required unless you've got conflicting mods. Return players player items back to them immediately after respawn. So basically, when they wake up after respawning, it'll trigger a short delay and re-equip them with their items. Delay the retrieval of items by a second. So this is if you're using things like kits or a store upon death, which is things that basically fire their payload before we want to re-equip them with the stuff that they deposited before entering the arena. Use event helper to schedule the events. So if you've got running a few of my events like Survival Arena, Paintball, Zombie Infection, and obviously now Gun Game, then yeah, you can have event helper manage all of the events, and that way players can use the voting system to vote for the events they want to play, and it won't start a new event while there's already an event running. Commands that prevent prevent when a player players are at the event, so things like kit, backpack, and backpack.open. So basically any commands that you don't want players to run while they're in there. So pretty self-explanatory. Add as many as you like. Allow players to stay in a team when they join the event. Set to true if you're using any sort of clan or team management plugin. So if you're using clans or anything that messes with the player teams system, just leave this as true. Otherwise you can set that to false and it will kick them out of their teams and then reacquire their teams when they leave the arena. List of items that cannot be taken into the event. So for example, if you've got things like photos and stuff which don't serialize very well, you can add whatever items using a short name of the item there. Prevent players who are flagged with the no escape plugin from joining the event. So again, just stops them from joining the event to get away from whatever's attacking them. Prevent XP loss when dying at the event. Prevent player from losing their backpack when dying at the event. Prevent player from opening up their backpack while dying at the event. These are all pretty self-explanatory. Set them to whatever you think is right for your server. Commands to run for each player when the game starts and the gates open. So use this is basically commands that you want to run when the game basically begins. So when the lobby's been successfully executed, there's enough players to play. These are the commands that are going to run for each player, and they're just basically like my command ID is an example of what a command would look like. So ID placeholder is obviously a placeholder for their user ID, so it'll replace that part of the string with their user ID. And commands to run when they leave the game. So when they leave the event, whether the game ends, whether they leave prematurely, these are the commands that will run for that player when he leaves. Prevent buffs from skill tree from activating, which won't disable mono behavior buffs, but by default set to true. So any sort of extra magazine skills and that sort of thing shouldn't have any effect while they're in the event. How often should we run a new event if event helper is not loaded? This will just basically schedule a match every 2 hours by default if it's not loaded. And then going into command settings, so these are just the commands to join, leave, restore items. So if a player dies, doesn't respawn while the plugin's loaded, and then for whatever reason they wake up while the plugin's unloaded, and then gets reloaded again, they can run this through a command to get their items back and put them back where they entered the game from. GG prizes, how they redeem their prizes, both for the participation prize and the winning prize. And prizes will be automatically given after the game is completed. But yeah, this is how they can redeem the prize if they've got pending prizes. Command open the scoreboard. So the scoreboard is GG score. This gives you a sort of a global leaderboard showing you based on ordered by how many players, so how many wins a player has, and then by kills, then by deaths. Prize settings, how many prizes should the player receive per claim. So this is how many rolls on the table they get. By default it's set to 1, gives them random amount of scrap between 300 and 600 scrap. It supports short name items with sort of custom skins, display names, text values, and the drop weight is basically how likely this particular item would be selected if there were multiple items. So if you have 3 items or 10 items that all have a drop weight of 100, it means that each item would have a 10% chance of being selected. Economic dollars for winning the match. It obviously requires the economics plugin, so minimum and maximum amount for this to reward the player for getting it. Same with server rewards, exactly the same. Minimum and maximum amount of points that the player will receive. Skill tree XP given to the player when they win the event, so again requires the skill tree plugin, and this is how much XP they'll get for winning the event. And then the participation prizes kind of work almost exactly the same, except for the fact that this is basically rolled on a threshold system. So we, for example, a score is basically a weapon progress. So if they kill someone with a revolver and move to the P2, that's considered adds 1 to their score. So by default, for every 5 weapons that the player progressed, they will get a roll on this table. So you can see here it comes with a significantly less amount of scrap per roll, but it gives you a bit more flexibility to award players for participating and doing well in an event, even if they didn't win. And you've got the same economic and server rewards for which are all again per roll. So if they did 15 points, they would get 3 rolls on this table. These are the prefab placeholder entities. So how many entities should we spawn and remove per tick when building and removing the arena? By default set to 20. It's generally enough because the arenas aren't huge. Spawn invisible walls, false. By default set to false, but you can enable that if you don't want players to jump off the edge. I have added walls all around, which I've tested a little bit, so I haven't been able to find a way out, but yeah, they can be a little bit jarring because they do kind of cover over a little bit of the cliff sides, so use that if you need to. Otherwise the penalty for dying for jumping off the edge should be enough to rein most players in. Lobby placeholders, these sorts of things I wouldn't recommend changing. These are pretty critical for the plugin to run. Spawn location placeholders, again, don't bother changing any of these. If you want to remove certain types from the arena, of prefabs in the arena, you can, remove types of trees that you don't like, or bushes, or logs, or whatever you want. The outsider settings are basically to prevent people from flying into the arena that aren't part of the arena. So it'll give them 10 seconds to vacate the area, and if they don't, it'll kill them. Notification settings, notify plugins, send notifications using the notify plugin. Send it while it's being advertised, that sort of thing. So just UI notify, GUI announcements, that sort of thing. And then the chat notification settings, should we send it when the game's beginning, cancelled, blah blah blah. And then the scoreboard settings. So how many players should we show? So should we show on the leaderboard? So just the servers that have hundreds and hundreds of players that might participate in this event over the course of multiple wipes. And I will add a config option before release to potentially wipe the scoreboard on wipe as well. But if you don't wipe the scoreboard on wipe, then how many players do you want to show the scoreboard for? So too many players, and you're using a lot of server resources to calculate the scores each time a game ends. So 50 seems to be a pretty good value. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoy. Any questions, feedback, or suggestions, as always, send them through. I love hearing from everyone. And I hope you guys like this one. Cheers.